We are now recording. So there are events for the season that we know of so far. And now we're going to get into a few different topics. I'm going to briefly touch on SGC finances. This is essentially a 6-month follow-up from the meeting that we had back in October, where I discussed our financial situation before we headed into the Towplane overhaul. I just want to give people an idea of where we're at, and then we will go away from finances to talk about a few objects and things, and then come back to this later in the agenda in terms of our tow fees for the year. But just to level set folks right up front here, we have made it through a lot of maintenance over the winter, which Chris Clicks will talk about here momentarily. But we still got some bills for that coming, and we've still got our springtime sort of startup expenses coming. But to give everybody, again, sort of a level set here, we've currently got about $35,000 in our bank account, $18,000 in our Fidelity account. That makes for a total of about $53,000. But like I said, we have a lot of near-term expenses, as we always do to start the season. We've got a $9,000 bill for the 2023 lease on the property from last year. We've got a $9,000 bill we've just paid for our Towplane insurance for this year. And then we've got the Pawnee annual coming up. That is an estimated price I've got in there based on previous years. And then we've got a big chunk remaining on the Cessna 182 engine overhaul. We've already paid a big deposit. We've paid for some labor and some other issues that were related to the overhaul, but we still have the balance remaining on the overhaul coming up here as that work completes. If you add all that up, anybody that hasn't already used your phone or your pocket calculator, it's about $45,000 in near-term bills. So that means that we are at the point of having roughly $8,000 in cash available to cover things in the near term. So that is not a ton of money, and that's why it's important for all of us to be thinking about the future health of the SGC and its finances, as well as this is a not so gentle nudge for those of you that have not yet paid for your seasonal glider trailer tie down space or facility fees or anything like that. Please do so if you can. And for those of you that have, I want to thank you for renewing your membership and paying your seasonal fees. We have had a very large portion of the membership already renew for this year, which I really appreciate. That has provided a notable boost to our cash on hand, and is one of the reasons that we are able to cover all these near-term bills. So for everyone, I think it's 80 folks plus that renewed their SGC membership for 2024, my heartfelt thanks to you. We've also had maybe a dozen folks pay for RV and glider trailer parking spots. So my thanks to all of you as well. Hopefully before too long, we'll get some more folks coming out once we open up the facility, and we'll get some revenue coming that will offset any continued bills that we see throughout the season. Speaking of getting operations going, at this time, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Chris Clicks to give just a brief status report on the state of the Cessna and its engine overhaul, and on our Pawnee, which I believe is coming up on its annual soon. So Chris, thank you so much. Please take it away.
Okay. Well, I assume that most everybody has seen the February issue of Towline, which I gave an update in there about the 182, the stringer, engine mount stringer that was cracked and had to be replaced, and some of the upgrades that he did along the way. there's been a lot of work done on the 182. The engine mount was stripped and repainted, inspected and repainted. Um, the besides the stringer, there was actually a new firewall, or not new firewall, a baggage bulkhead put in the back, and um, uh, there's the right pilot side master cylinder, brake master cylinder was replaced. Um, uh, I cover a lot of it there, so you could read about it if you want in the February issue. But where we're at right now is the main thing is the engine overhaul. Um, we're hoping to have the airplane back by mid-March here, within a week or so, all done, ready, so that I could just fly the Pawnee to Lake Arrow and Chelan for its annual, and then fly the Cessna back. Unfortunately, the engine overhaul shop said that they still haven't got the case back from the service center that inspects the case and does a bunch of work to it for the engine overhaul. And so they're waiting for that to come back. Once that comes back, then it'll be about 2 weeks for them to put the engine back together and get shipped. Then you've got the shipping time. So Lake Arrow, right now, it doesn't look like they'll actually even have the engine in hand till the end of March. And that means, I think, another 2 weeks before we even have the airplane. So it'll be, mid-April before we even have the 182 available. So what I'm going to do is next week, after the insurance is back on the Pawnee, is head over to Ephrata and fly the Pawnee to Lake Arrow and Chelan, so that they can get started on that annual, and at least we'll have the Pawnee to use until the Cessna is back. I anticipated that we would have some delays and really push to get the work on the engine overhaul done as soon as possible, get started on as soon as possible last fall. And it's just the way it worked out. I think we did the best we could, so this is where we're at. Any questions on that? I think financially, wise, I saw that y'all had, I think you had 25,000 or something for remaining. It's actually 28,500 is what we're expecting to pay D&B aircraft engines yet before we get the engine back, possibly more. And then we also still have expenses for the engine installation and finishing that up in Lake Arrow. So I didn't see those on your sheet there, Noel, either. So you might put those numbers in there. Any questions from anybody? I think that pretty much covers everything that I know about. Like I said, you can read up on the February issue of Towline to get a little more detail on the 182 and what has been going on with it in Lake Arrow. All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. And yes, I have updated the spreadsheet. All right. Let me go ahead and share the screen again, and we will pick up where we left off. So, as Chris mentioned, we've got a little bit of delay in getting the Cessna back, but with any luck here, we'll have the Pawnee ready for opening weekend. So, when will opening weekend be? And at this point, we are planning on April 13th. That is the second Saturday in April. That gives us just a little bit of time here to make sure that we've got the Pawnee on the line and that we have some volunteers to open the facility. If any of you can make it out, we do a pretty good job of cleaning and closing up the facility every fall. But every spring, there's always a few things that need taken care of. We need to prep some things, pull some things out of storage, make sure the water heaters are working, that sort of stuff. So stay tuned. If you can come out, dinner's on me this year. Be happy to cover your dinner on Saturday night for those of you that can make it out and help us make sure that everything is in shipshape and ready to rock. And barring disaster, tows will be available. We've got commitment from at least one person and hopefully more than one to be available as a tow pilot on that weekend. So if we get a few folks out on Saturday, we'll be able to quickly get through the opening checklist, make sure everything's functional, and then maybe go out and do some short flights on Saturday. Definitely do some towing on Sunday. And it'll be good to get up above that Ephrata Air and get a good view of the Columbia Basin again after a few months off. So if you can, come on out, get reacquainted with your fellow pilots, and remember, this is your facility too. I will work with our webmaster to make sure that we have signups available online soon. Watch your inbox. We'll try to put out an email announcement for that. And let me try a quick live demo here, which is always dangerous. Yes. If you open up the SGC website, we will make sure that the 2024 Ephrata Operations sign up here under events will show that sign up. So keep your eyes on the website, keep your eyes on your inbox, and we will get that going soon. All right, just 1 second here. All right.
While you're waiting there, I just looked up the amount that we would still owe Lake Arrow for the engine installation. It's about $1,000. So.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. For those keeping track at home, that means our available cash will be down to about $3,000. So, as I said earlier, get your seasonal fees in now if you can. We'd really appreciate it. It really help the club out. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or any of the board members. All right, so we've talked about opening weekend. We're going to try to make it fun. Going to try to make it enjoyable. Going to have some tows available for you. But that means two things. One, you need to know where to park your glider trailer when you show up. And two, you need to know what you're going to pay for a tow. So on the first topic, that one's an easy one. We are going to hold the tie down spot and glider trailer lottery at the April general meeting. So stay tuned on that. And thanks to Tom Dixon for running that this year. And see the tow line for a little blurb about that as well. As far as tow fees go, this is our big topic for tonight, and it is a very important one. Because the SGC, as you guys know, has been struggling to cover its costs and obligations. This is not a new problem. I started coming out in 2009, and this was already something that the founders and board members at that time, 15 years ago, were lamenting. So I'm going to take a line that Tori Tolton said to me earlier today, which is that we've kind of been flying in sync here for a while. And we all know that only one thing happens if you stay in the sink, and it's not a good thing. So we've been trying to figure out how do we get ourselves out of the sink and into better air. And in the process of doing that, we've done a bunch of different financial analyses over the last 2 years. I've done a couple, Chris has done some, Dave's done some, Tori's done some. I mean, again, multiple people have done this. We've come at this from different angles. We've looked at the numbers in different ways. We've looked at historical averages over 5 years, over 20 years, because many people don't know this, but I was previously the treasurer of the Evergreen Soaring Club for several years. I've looked at their records that I had access to back then, as well as our records. And the bottom line is we all end up coming to the same conclusion. Owning two tow planes costs a lot of money, and that's a huge driver of cost and thus fees for us here at the SGC. The other conclusion that we come to once we look at those numbers, and I'll show you some in a little bit, is that our tow fees do not provide enough revenue to fully pay for our two tow planes, given the number of tows we're performing each season. Over the last several years, we've attempted to grow the total number of tows. We've tried to have additional events, and we've encouraged encampments. We've had some positive momentum with that, like the SSA Junior Camp this coming early July. And I want to reiterate that, no matter what else we say tonight, I want everyone to know that we want to continue pursuing these opportunities. We want to grow the use of SGC resources. We want to grow the number of folks that get a chance to fly with SGC, whether that's in Ephrata or at Methow or perhaps other places. We are open to all of those things. But we are many years removed from what brought two tow planes to Ephrata. For a little historical context really quickly, if folks go back and they look at the founding documents of the SGC, it was originally meant to be sort of a club of clubs, to be a regional coordinating body, and we are working to get back to those roots, certainly, and we want to continue to partner more across organizations in the Northwest. But it moved to being an operating entity in order to pursue events and contests and flying in Ephrata because of such a unique opportunity and unique place to fly. And holding those events and having other clubs like the Boeing Club and then the WSSA, the WUSA Club, encamp for entire seasons at Ephrata provided enough continuous operation to justify those tow planes. But again, returning to the top of this page, those clubs stopped coming out to Ephrata and encamping for entire seasons many, many years ago. And even if we add some events back with a couple more 1 week long encampments for clubs, or perhaps we go and we do another organized event like Methow somewhere else, those events don't close the gap. And again, stay tuned. I'm going to show you some numbers on this. On top of that, weather, fires, and other unexpected issues can cause big swings in our total tow count each year. And if all of our tow plane costs are being borne simply out of tow fees, a down year in terms of tows really hurts. It makes it really hard to plan and save money for maintenance. It makes it hard for us to know in any given year whether we should save up money for future expenses, whether we should take care of those small squawks before they become big squawks. It's really hard to anticipate. Part of the reason we've had such variance in our tow plane costs over the last 5 years is because there has been a lot of deferred maintenance as people were trying to save money in these uncertain years. And then eventually issues grew so big that they could not be ignored and we had to spend a bunch of money on them. I think we'd all like to have a little more consistency in all of that. And our current tow fee situation just makes that very hard. So what have we done in the past? Well, we've tried raising dues and other fees to help. We've raised tow rates, we've raised membership dues, we've rejiggered fees for various parts of our whole organization. But not surprisingly, raising rates is not a good way to make people happy. And in some ways, we're starting to rob Peter to pay Paul. We're taking money that we're bringing in for certain fees, and we're turning around and we're using them to pay for the tow planes. And there's one school of thought that says, hey, people come to Ephrata for the total experience. They don't come just because we have tow planes, and they don't come just because of the training facility. They come for both. So, hey, who cares what fee it's under? If you're paying, and you get everything that's there. And there's a logic to that. But, we're a member-oriented organization, and everyone should feel like they're paying a fair share of the resources that we, and I use that term including everyone that's hearing the sound of my voice, we collectively own. If you're a member of this club, you have a stake in this equipment, in these amenities, in these offerings. They are shared resources for you and me and all of us. And there are strong feelings by some that fees should really directly offset the costs related to the item. There's a logic to this other way of looking at it, right? Which is, hey, my membership dues should cover the base costs of operating the organization, and I don't want my membership dues covering other things like the ground lease for tie downs or whatever, right? Facility fees, they should cover the cost of operating the training facility. Our utilities, our Wi-Fi, our phone service for uh, people calling in if they land out, our deck, our bathrooms. Again, this is all reasonable and logical. And if we look at Dave Roysch's recent analysis, he's done one of the most recent financial analyses and broken down our income and our cost by fee and by bill type. His analysis confirms that our non-towing fees are successfully covering the costs of these various areas. So I'm going to bring up his spreadsheet, and I don't want anyone to get too caught up in understanding all of the numbers here. It's a lot to take in one glance if you're not familiar with the format. But in short, what he is showing is that we are bringing in just a little bit more each year than our costs for these things. So for those that are curious, you can ask questions in a little bit directly to Dave about his method, but what you see here is a breakdown of our various expense types based on what they impact, whether they impact the training facility, the RV parking, um, the bathhouse, those sorts of things. And then if we look at the dues and fees up here that people are paying for, we're seeing that we're making just a little bit of cash over and above our expenses each year. And in some cases, we're clearing a little bit more than in others. But the bottom line is that those fees relative to their related expenses are in a healthy state. That's the big takeaway. So it really does come down to the fixed cost of owning our tow planes. And I want to walk through this so that all of you really understand where we are with this. Every year, we have annual inspections, insurance, hangar fees, license and registration fees, no matter what, right? We're going to have the tow planes. We gotta have those costs. And then additionally, we have periodic overhauls like the engine, propeller, fabric. We have things like oil changes that I haven't listed here. We've got occasional instrument we have to replace, right? But these are the big ones. These are the ones that drive the majority of the costs. And if you look at every single analysis done by all of us, again, across my past work with Evergreen Soaring, my current work with the SGC, Chris, Tori, Dave, everybody comes to roughly the same conclusion, which is that those fixed costs I listed above work out to between $9,000 and $12,000 per year per plane. And there's year-to-year variance, but that is the rule of thumb takeaway that if you look across a few years of time, doesn't matter which time slice you look at, doesn't matter which mix of tow planes you look at, this is the cost you're going to end up paying on average every year. And remember, we have 2 tow planes. So that means the SGC incurs between $17,000 and $20,000 in tow plane costs each year before providing a single tow. So as you can imagine, just to stretch this out a little further, we start with a negative $20,000 balance, let's say, and then we're trying to work our way back up to zero, $75 at a time with a tow. Except it's not $75. I'll show that in a minute. So what does this mean with our current tow fee arrangement? Well, if we, again, look at the numbers, we're charging, I believe it was $75.50. So I rounded it up to $76 here for a standard tow. Half of that cost covers the variable cost of each tow. And in a little bit, I'm going to show you a spreadsheet that Tori put together that illustrates this. But basically, if you look at the fuel and the oil and a couple little minor consumables, the money that you spend in fuel and oil for every tow is about $38, which means we only have the other $38 to pay for those fixed costs. So going back to my earlier point, you got a $20,000 negative balance to start, you're working it off $38 at a time. That means we need to provide between 450 and 530 tows per year just to break even with our tow planes. We've only done around 300 to 400 tows the last couple of years. Before COVID, we were already flirting with right around 400, sometimes 380. So again, this is part of a long slide, but it doesn't matter whether it's 320 or 380. That's still a pretty solid shortfall from what we really need to be making to pay for our fixed fees and be able to maintain our tow planes. For some of you, I know on this call, you're saying, yes, I've heard this before. This is not news, but bear with me. Some people have never seen these numbers. Some people are new to this. So I'm just making sure we are all completely level set here. As I said before, additional events and participation can help, and we want to pursue those things. But personally, I think it would be irresponsible to rely on record numbers of tows year after year after year just to break even. We haven't seen 450 tows probably in about 8 or 9 years. And I would love to get us back up to that point. And no matter what happens here, I am going to work with the other board members and some enthusiastic folks we've got to keep engaging with other clubs, to keep moving the bar up in terms of our participation. Because not only do we need it from a financial standpoint, but it's also more fun, right? We all enjoy flying with more people, more events, more encampments. It's just great to get out there and fly with your friends. And we really want to promote that. But if we looked at the realistic number of tows in the short term, and we raised our tow fees to cover those fixed costs at only 300 to 350 tows per year, we'd have to jack up our tow rates to $85 or even $90 per tow. This would make us definitely the highest rate in the region, and that would discourage people from taking repeated tows, right? This is a problem with the tow fee structure we have. The more tows you take, the more money you've spent. And if the tows are more expensive than what you can get somewhere else, you're not going to want to take repeated tows. People might still pay the higher rate to come out and fly at our big events because they are awesome and fun, and we put work into making them cool. And all of you who are here on the call are a part of making that a fun, awesome environment out there. We want people coming back to that, not worrying that, oh, well, I go out there, but I got to pay more. I could get more flights for less money at my local club. That's the exact opposite of what we want to encourage more participation. Again, I know I'm hammering on this a little bit, but I just, again, want to be really clear here. It doesn't matter how we look at this. We keep coming back to the following truths. Owning 2 tow planes is expensive, and covering the fixed costs using the tow fees makes it tough to reliably pay our bills and hard to keep the tow rates reasonable. Think of how much more enticing it would be to fly at a freighter if we could offer lower tow rates. How awesome would it be if we actually had tow rates low enough that people were interested in making the drive to a freighter because they perceive it as a better value than flying at their local club sometimes. And again, we've got the facility, we've got the people, we've got the events. So if we can somehow figure that out too, man, that would make Freda a really compelling place to fly. But where we are now is this corner that we found ourselves in. The good news is that there are some really consistent things about our organization. We consistently have roughly 150 members in the SGC every year. A good chunk of them take 5 or less tows every single year because they come out for one event. But the other, I don't know, half or so of our members take 5 or more tows. They're either coming out for a full week and flying that full week because we got awesome weather every day, which we do in the summer, or they're coming out to 2 or 3 weekends and they're taking a couple tows every weekend, which is great. Again, Freda has those reliable, wonderful, consistent conditions. So we can count on these things happening year after year as long as we put on good events, as long as we keep our facilities, and as long as we have tows available. So where do we go from here? Pardon the bullet point at the bottom, I'll return to it. We can't keep spiraling tow fees upwards, right? If we raise them up to $85 or $90, I'd be really surprised if any of you on this call would honestly raise your hand and say, yeah, I'm happy paying that rate. So here's option one. We could sell a tow plane. This is something that has been floated in the past, and it is something that we want to seriously consider. It would immediately give us a bunch of relief from fixed costs. And on paper, it makes paying for the tow plane with our tow fees more palatable. All of a sudden, we don't need to do as many tows in order to cover those fixed fees because we just cut our fixed fees in half. But can we reliably support events with just one tow plane, right? When we get 20 or 30 of you out there, we often need 3 or 4 tow planes to make sure that our launch lines are reasonable. And that means having 2 of our own tow planes plus having another tow plane or 2 from other clubs that are friendly to the SGC and want some guaranteed tow income by bringing their tow plane out for a week or 2. And we are happy to share that load. But if we go down to 1 tow plane, now we're trying to get 3 other tow planes out to Afreda all at the same time. And that's a big ask for a lot to try to get that many different clubs to bring a tow plane out at the same time. Additionally, for those of you that have not yet read ahead of my words, that bottom bullet point, Afreda's a long drive for many, even those of us that are in the closest metropolitan areas like Seattle. It's a multi-hour trek. A lot of us have clubs that are closer. So when we go to Afreda, we want to know that we're going to have tows. We want to go out and have fun with our friends. And if we only have one tow plane available and it goes down, let's say a broken tail wheel or a bad main wheel brake system, yeah, that's a small squawk in the grand scheme of things. We could have it up and running in 3 or 4 days, but guess what? That means that either the weekend that you came out is blown or the week-long event we had planned is lost. It shuts down ops if we only have one tow plane and it goes offline for even a few days. And that's going to leave people with a bitter taste in their mouth, right? Again, I'll bet you if I polled all of you right now, a large portion of you would say that if I drove a 6-hour or 10-hour round trip to spend a few days at Afreda and I got out there and the first 3 guys got tows and then the tow plane broke and I had to go home, you're all going to say that was a disappointment, right? You're all going to say that sucked. And again, we want to have fun. We want to have awesome experiences. And so if we look at our need for reliable operations, right? If we say to ourselves as a group here, we want people to go to have fun at Afreda, we want tows to be reliably available there, and we don't want a single small squawk to completely shut down operations, then we need 2 tow planes. right? That is just the logical conclusion. So here we are. We just talked ourselves into, well, we kind of need 2 tow planes, and the fixed cost of 2 tow planes is high. So we could change the way we pay for our tow planes. Instead of just charging a fee per tow, we could charge everyone that takes a tow an upfront fee for their share of the fixed tow plane costs. What this does is this aligns the fixed tow plane costs with a relatively fixed income. Because again, we reliably have, let's call it 150 members a year. And let's say roughly 90 or so of them per year take at least 1 tow. We could then reliably bring in 1/90th per person of our anticipated fixed costs. And then each tow is not trying to cover those fixed costs. So it would allow us to reduce our tow rates so that our tow rates only have to cover the variable costs. And that would encourage more tows because now when people come out to a FREDA, yes, they had to pay that one-time fee, but every tow is cheap. And every time they fly, we all get a friendly reminder with our tow bill that, hey, that tow I just took is as cheap or cheaper than my home club or the other place that I fly. And coming to a FREDA now is something where the more I go, the more cheap tows I get in a year. I shouldn't say cheap. The more relatively less expensive tows I get. And so I'm getting more bang for my buck the more I fly. And hey, if we want to encourage more flying, isn't this one way to do that? By essentially rewarding people for flying more. So if we do this, we have 2 options because we have 2 tow planes. So we could charge enough to cover the fixed costs of 1 tow plane and then reduce the tow rates by a small amount. And I'm getting to numbers, bear with me. Or we could charge a slightly higher fixed fee to cover the majority of the fixed costs for both tow planes and lower the tow rates by quite a bit. As a little footnote here, this may allow us to lower some other fees once we have evidence that this system is working. Like I said before, some of our rates were raised in the past because we were trying to just cover our bills overall. And now that we're doing some fine-grained analysis of which fees are paying for what things, we might be able to slightly reduce certain mainline fees, certain event fees. This is all TBD, but I just want people to understand that this is not just looking to add cost. This is looking at rebalancing cost and trying to keep this as affordable as we can, because again, we're a membership organization. We all collectively own these resources. So here's where you get to see some numbers. And I'm going to say, Tori did some awesome analysis and his numbers are out to the penny. When you hear me talking about them, I'm going to round them off to near whole dollar amounts to make it easy to discuss and to mentally take into account and think about. So this is a page that Tori put together that summarizes a whole bunch of detailed financial analysis that I'm just really quickly flipping through to show you guys that there's a lot of numbers he's put in behind the scenes here. He's put together a great model. Again, we've looked at it. I've vetted it against numbers that I've run in analyses by other people. So we have a really high confidence that this is accurate. And in fact, Tori even did me a solid, and I got him every single receipt out of QuickBooks for like the last 10 years of tow plane expenses. And he cross-checked the actual dollar amounts against the models here, and it came out to within pennies when it comes to these numbers we're about to talk about. So we are going to be basing our planning here around a few key numbers. Number one, we're going to believe that we're going to continue to get roughly 90 members taking at least one tow per year. This is one of these sort of constants that we see from year to year, is somewhere between 80 and 90 members take a tow at least one a year. We've also been seeing a little over 300 tows per year, and we think that with the junior camp and a couple other pushes, we can be planning on about 350 tows per year. And then we rounded off the fuel cost to $7 because that is a little bit higher than what we're seeing right now, but without going into politics, there's obviously some uncertainty in the Middle East region right now. We have a new Port of Ephrata director who is trying to revamp the airport, bring in Jet A, court some larger organizations, and so we're being on the safe side here, and we're just rounding it off to $7 a gallon. And when you plug those numbers into the models, here's what you get. If we were to continue today with our model of just charging people a tow fee every time they take a tow, we'd have to get 350 tows at $88 a tow in order to break even. If we wanted to cover full freight, essentially, pretty much all of our tow plane fixed costs for both tow planes, we would ask every member who takes at least one tow to pay about $192 at the time of your first tow or before. But because we have now covered the fixed costs, every tow you take starting with the first tow is $39. So we go from $75 a tow to $39 a tow. And then the middle ground would be to ask for a roughly $100 tow plane support fee from everybody who takes at least one tow. And we'd be able to knock $12 off of everybody's tow, just like that. And now you're down to paying one of the cheaper, but not the cheapest, tow fee in the region. If you want to know how these numbers pencil out, you can see that Tori has modeled up some costs down here. And when you look at the sort of 3 to 5 tow range, you'll see that these dollars roughly line out to be even somewhere between 3 and 5 tows. No matter which way we go, if you're thinking of yourself as a member who's like, I'm probably going to take 3 tows at Ephrata this year, guess what? This is what you'd pay for your total for your tows and fees, if we charge any, for 3 tows. This is what you'd pay for 5 tows. This is what you'd pay for 10 tows. So one of the things to illustrate here is that right now, if we were to jack this up to just the straight tow fees like we charge now from $76 to $88, and you come out and you tow for an entire week, you're going to pay almost $500. But if we go with one of these other fees, you actually get to pay less because you're towing more. And we're talking about knocking somewhere between $60 and $100 off your total bill for a week of towing. And that's because by having this fixed fee, we are, in my opinion, more equitably spreading the fixed cost of the tow planes across everybody who is taking advantage of their availability. If you take at least one tow, then by definition, you needed a tow plane to be available for you, right? So you have therefore helped cover the cost of making sure that tow plane was available. And again, for the folks that are our big time Ephrata pilots, if you come out and fly with us for a couple weeks, you start to under these systems where we have an upfront fee, you start to save some significant money. And again, if we want to think about how do we make Ephrata attractive to come and fly and spend time at, isn't it awesome to be able to tell people that under this new system, you would actually be able to save money over the same number of tows if we just charged a tow fee. And in fact, when you get up to this dollar amount, save money over what you were paying last year. Because it's, oops, sorry. It's, again, easy to do the math, right? $76 times 10 tows. So you'd pay $760 in tow fees if you took 10 tows last year. Both of these are less than that. So let me return to my presentation, and we can certainly bring these numbers back up when we have Q&A. Now, there are some questions that remain if we go down this route of having a fixed fee. First one is, how do we apply the fixed fee? Do we do it when you take your first tow? Do we put it as part of your membership fee? This is my personal little aside I've put at the end of this, which is I think there are some downsides to that. We have members who don't take tows. I think that, again, as part of our mission, that it's nice to try to keep membership affordable. If you look back to our founding documents in the 1950s, they wanted to try to keep membership affordable so that people who were just interested in gliding and were members of other clubs and just wanted to support the SGC but not necessarily fly with them could do so relatively inexpensively. On the flip side, to be fair, rolling it into our membership fee would make it easy to administer. Do we try to roll it into event fees? There's a lot of stuff we could dive into there. I don't want to get that deep today, but I want to show people that there are different ways we could approach this. Certainly, the easy one in the short term would be, hey, when you take your first tow, you're also going to get a bill for this fee on your first tow. After that, it's the low tow rate from then on out, no additional fees. So, I don't want in this discussion people to think that we have seized upon this one thing and that we are not looking at other ways of bolstering our financial future. So the board and a subcommittee of the board is going to continue to meet off and on throughout the year. And if any of you want to join that group, please let me know. And we're going to look into several new, I don't want to say solutions, but new potential avenues that we haven't done in the past. So, for example, would it be possible, without messing up our insurance or doing anything crazy, to have a certain group of power pilots that are checked out to fly the 182 more like a flying club as a rental in the off season? We're only using these tow planes for 4 or 5, maybe at the outside 6 months a year. That leaves half the year where they're sitting there and we're not using them to offset their fixed costs. So if we could have these things fly and earn some revenue off of them, that would then help lower everybody's fixed costs, or fixed fee, fee for fixed costs, I should say. Maybe we could work with other clubs to do one of these two things. Could we rent a tow plane out to another club during our off season? Again, we're only operating half the year. Are there other clubs that would operate during our shoulder season, where maybe we let them use the tow plane, but we reserve the right to call it back if we have an operations emergency or aircraft on ground thing? Or during our off season, maybe this makes it easy for another club to operate with fewer tow planes, keep their costs down, and we all win, right? Maybe we can set up some kind of mutual support arrangement. Could we architect an agreement across several clubs and either sell one of our tow planes but have guaranteed access to another club's tow plane? And think about it this way. Let's say another club says, yes, you can use our tow plane when you need it, but we're going to charge you $5,000 a year for that. Guess what? That $5,000 a year that we'd pay is less than what we're paying for the fixed fees or fixed costs associated with one of our tow planes. So maybe that's the right financial choice. There's some operational upsides and downsides to that, but it's something we want to continue exploring. Alternatively, do we do the exact opposite? Does the SGC keep 2 tow planes And part of our mission as an umbrella organization to the Pacific Northwest is that we offer one tow plane to other clubs, not as a rental, but as more of some kind of like insurance plan or emergency backup, so that they can operate with one tow plane and keep things less expensive for their members. And then if they have that tow plane go down for maintenance, um, they've paid us a fixed fee in advance or something along those lines, and then they get the use of our tow plane for a period of time to help them continue their operations. So these are options. They are not fully fleshed out, and they are not something that we can implement probably this season. So while these may provide us additional revenue in the future, we still have a question about how we do 2024. So, having gone through all of this, and I know it was a lot, thank you for those that have stayed on the line. I am going to stop sharing my screen, and I am going to come back on camera here, and I am going to throw it open to everybody here for Q&A, because we've just presented a new proposal basically to the members. And I think that because we are a member-driven club, it's important that we get everybody's thoughts and feedback here on this idea of a fixed fee for tow plane access and lowering of the tow rates. And because of the statements we made earlier, I will say again in email, about tow rates not being higher this year. I think we basically want to discuss this proposal and then get a sense from everybody here, the members. Do we want to continue with last year's tow rates and try to get through the year, knowing that there's financial risk there, but keeping our tow rates from skyrocketing? Or do we want to try to adopt one of these new tow rate frameworks and try that this year? Anybody want to come off mute and ask a question, ask about numbers, give their opinion on this whole topic?
No, it's Tori, just to say a couple more words.
Please go ahead.
You had mentioned, do we want to keep the tow rates the same and charge forward? We know that is the status quo is an option. It's kind of the easy button option. That option will cost the club probably at least $20,000. So while it is an option and it feels good and it feels easy, it's actually money that we will spend as a club. It just won't be coming out of our pocketbooks right now. So I wanted to, as I looked at the numbers, I wanted to reflect on what are the changes that I think I want to see. I would not like to see a change where I go to a freighter and I'm sitting on the ground waiting for a tow on a really great day and not have an airplane available to take me. When I've given up the time from my family, from work, and all the hopefulness that goes into flying in the summertime in those few short months, that's a change that I can anticipate right now that I would prefer not to see. So I'm really encouraged that we're at least talking about and thinking about. Nothing's set in stone, nothing's going to be forced upon us, but I'm really encouraged by the idea that, hey, we might have some ideas that could make flying in a freighter more affordable and drive more participation, and something that creates a lift for everybody.
So, hey, Noel, this is Malin. I thought I would just speak to this just for a second. When you have a 126 like I do, it's not unusual for me to take a 4,500 foot tow, and it's not unusual if you have a DG 8 million You know what I mean? To take a tow to 10 feet, release, and you can fly to Idaho and back, you see. But both of us still need a tow plane, but one of us is paying more for the tow plane than the other. And I think that's part of I've kind of complained about this, not complained, but talked to other people about this for the last couple of years. So people in my condition end up paying more of the tow plane bill than others. And I like the basic cost. If you're going to fly a glider, you need a tow plane. I like that $200 idea. And then 38, 39 bucks. I think that's a great deal. And I'm with Tori too. I don't think you guys could get away with giving one of the tow planes, or selling a tow plane is what I'm saying. I don't think we can get away with that. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Malin. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I really like the idea of that sharing the fixed cost with an additional fixed fee for using the tow plane. It seems like a very fair and equitable way of sharing the cost and making it, especially if you can significantly reduce the tow fees like you've shown with the numbers. That's a wonderful idea, I think.
Thanks, John. Anybody else? Go ahead, Brian.
So just a procedural way that you didn't address in that split cost. One thing you could do is have the membership sign up, have a tick box for I fully intend to be towed this year, bill me now. And everybody else would just get billed on the first day if they didn't check that box. It's pretty procedural, but it would let you collect some of the money up front. Something to throw in your hat.
Good idea. Thank you very much, Brian.
Hey, Noel, this is Kurt Chenoweth.
Go ahead, Kurt.
And, I commend all your thinking and all the people that were involved in looking at the different approaches. Tori, you looked at it really well, Noel and other people. And, being part of Puget Sound Soaring, which is another operation around here, flying gliders, of kind of the similar situation where you're a member-oriented group. It's a nonprofit. You're trying to come out with incomes and expenses and make it all balance out so you can do the same thing next year. And your thought about, you hit on a lot of important elements here that other people have thought about in the past. And I know that I don't want to say struggle, but we in Puget Sound Soaring, are doing the same thing. Our total budget for the year is in the $65,000 to $70,000 range. So it's a small business. In fact, it's not much bigger than your own personal business, kind of a thing. Your personal life, you spend that much money. But the important things to me, I think, that I got out of it was that you're looking at the fixed expenses that are involved. You're looking at the fixed income that you have, which comes from dues and memberships. And you're looking at the operational expenses, which is fuel, oil, all these sort of things. And you're also looking at the operational income, which are tow fees. Now, what I hear here, you're on a path where you're trying to make the tow fees pay the fixed expenses for the tow planes. And the way I have sort of looked at things in the past, and the way some of the other members in our club have looked at it, is that we're trying to think about the total operational expenses of the whole club, and then the total fixed expenses of the whole club. And some of those expenses are, in our case, it's a porta potty, or in your case, it's maintaining the shower room or the bathrooms or whatever. So if you could look at it simply as if the operational income is going to pay for operational expenses, fixed income is going to pay for fixed expenses, and not worry too much about whether we're talking specifically about the tow plane fixed expenses, but just look at the overall big picture. And then say, okay, how do I balance that so it's fairer for everybody? And that's what you're trying to do here. And to me, it gets down to a fundamental thing that if I want my fixed expenses to be paid by my fixed income, then it seems like that I need to be thinking about my membership dues and my membership dues and fees for the year. And that ought to take care of all of my fixed expenses. That might mean, in the case of the Seattle Garden Council here, that maybe your dues have to go up if you want to pay for those fixed expenses. And in so doing, you might very well end up reducing your toll fees because your operational expenses trying to be balanced with the operational income, which are toll fees, will come out better. And so, and that's the way I sort of think. And I see that in your thinking here, the same thing. And so, you know, everything sounds good. And then it's just a matter of, okay, how do we really implement this? And can we do it this year and this sort of thing? And then you get to the point that if you think about the fixed income, which are the dues part, and just start out and see how much that is compared to the total fixed expenses, then you would come to the conclusion that I've got to raise that income from the fixed income, the dues. And so then you say, okay, who ought to pay for that? Should every member pay for that? Or should only the people that fly pay for it? So you will get into that philosophical discussion, and I just heard a comment about that. To me, just my simple view from my personal feelings is that if you have an operation and a facility and you have members in it that are going to be using that, some members are going to use it more than others, but still it's there. I would think in my mind that every member ought to share in the fixed expenses, which means just raise everybody's dues right now. And that takes care of it. You don't have to worry about picking people out later and charging them another $100 when they take the first toll. Just raise the dues. And I think if you did that, and then maybe your toll fees might come down when you look at the numbers. If it does, then that's kind of a plus in some people's minds. They think they're getting the same thing they got right now cheaper. But in the end, you got to cover all these expenses with all this money. And it's not smoke and mirrors, it's just facts, kind of a thing. So I'm all for it, but you hear what I'm saying, and that is raise the dues to take care of the fixed expenses.
Gotcha.
Anyway, that's just a comment.
Thank you, Kurt. I appreciate it. Appreciate the support, and yes, I think we're singing roughly the same tune the way you were explaining that and the way we're talking. So good stuff. Thank you. Heinz has had his hand up for a little bit, so go ahead, Heinz. You might have to come off mute, Heinz. Still not hearing you, Heinz. So why don't you work on your audio, see if you can get off mute, and in the meantime, we'll go to Rita. Go ahead, Rita.
Hello. I myself would go with the middle ground there, with the make it around $100 extra for those who tow. And even though I fly a motor glider, I take a lot of tows a year, between 7 and 10, Meta, Inifreta quite often. But I think it would be more fair for members who don't fly to not to have to pay a higher membership fee. For motor glider pilots who don't tow or don't tow as much to make it worth to lower the cost of the tow. And mainly for visiting pilots who are not being hit by another, I don't know what was that, $200 for first tow or higher membership fees right away, because things do add up. If there is a motorhome spot, there is the tie down fee, there is the facility fee, and then the tow fees, the gas to get there and all of that. I mean, it's, of course, it's not, have to have some money to be able to be in this sport. But I think that that middle line will be a good first year to see how it works and to warm up to it, and then go from there in the following years. I think it will make it more fair. Also, if I think about it, that I might pay a lot of upfront costs, and if something happens and I don't fly, then I just put a lot of money towards flying even more and more, and then losing a lot of money and not being able to fly, then it will be even worse. But I like the idea, and I think $100 extra doesn't kill anybody and doesn't make the cost so much more expensive for a visiting pilot, or if they can be accommodated in some ways, maybe even to make IFRETA, especially for first-time visitors, or for some events like the dust up, and it's only a 3-4 day event, to make it more tolerable cost. That's all what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And thank you for all the work that you guys put into it. That's a hard one to figure out and come up with something that works out. Appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you. Heinz, any luck coming off mute? Nope. Okay. If you want to try to type in chat, Heinz, we can take your question or comment in the chat window. Meanwhile, we'll go to Matt Coleman. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? I'm driving in my car.
Yes,
Okay.
please keep your eyes on the road.
I'm at a stoplight, fortunately. So my question is, if we go with the plan to have the Towplane fee and the lower tow rates, how would that work with, to borrow a phrase from what we use in the military and Boeing, guest help tow planes? So when Evergreen or somebody sends in a tow plane, what kind of rates would we pay to tow behind one of those?
That is a good question, and I don't think the committee actually had a firm answer on that.
We
Tori,
discussed it.
we discussed it.
We discussed it a little bit. One of the ideas that we had was, if we have an event where we have some of the tows provided by another organization, and they have an expectation of higher recovery than our low tow fee, is we would estimate how many tows they would provide in the mix, and we would basically load those costs into our event fees, is the idea. So you'd still pay the same tow fee to the SGC, but the event fees would basically estimate, here's how many tows we expect the other tow planes to provide. So that was just one idea. We haven't run the math. We haven't figured out all of the particulars about that, but we're expecting that we would only be leveraging those other planes when it's planned in advance, right? These tow planes aren't coming in while we have an AOG aircraft on the ground and can't fly, and somebody just shows up. This would be planned in advance. We'd be able to expect, and yeah, we'd have to pay more for their tow plane to get out there. But that's not actually all that different than how it works today, where we have to pay for ferry fees and other costs that are associated, including potentially higher tow costs than our tow planes already provide.
Yeah, and just to give a quick example of like what Tori said. So let's use like a dust up weekend, right? And let's assume that for the sake of argument, we'll take the Evergreen tow plane, because I know some of those numbers offhand, right? They're charging roughly the same as our tow rates last year, which is about $75 for a standard tow. So let's say we're in the scenario where we've dropped our tows down to $62 a tow. So that's $13 a tow, basically, that we're undercharging. And if you figure their tow planes are going to do 10 or 15 tows a day, you take that 30, let's call it 30 tows over the course of the weekend times $12. Okay, now you got your $360, right? If I'm doing my math right. So we load that $360, and that works out to like $10 per person as part of the event fee. Done. And certainly,
Okay.
I will say that if other people have ideas and suggestions, we're open to them, but it seems like this is a surmountable challenge.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds reasonable. Yeah, okay. I was just curious if anybody had honored that scenario. So, all right, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you for bringing it up so that everybody could hear about that, because I think it's good that everybody understands that there are these things that we have to think about, but that they are surmountable. So appreciate it. Brian, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Just I want to say I appreciate all the time and effort you've showed us that you put into it, and you did a great job presenting it tonight.
Yes.
Right there. I think when you're talking about this year, I think the $100 fee, kind of like Rita, would be a really good idea. Kind of almost sell like insurance that we're going to have tow planes next year. So, and I even like the $200 fee, but I think maybe easing into it's a good idea.
Thank you, Brian. Heinz, looks like you're off mute. Go ahead, Heinz.
Can you hear me now?
We got you good.
I finally found the button. Hey, I have a much bigger picture, and that is a power plane group that does towing for all the clubs. And there may even be some tax advantage to have a power plane group that is good enough so that non-tow planes join the power plane group. So that we have one group that provides tow planes for everybody and at a given cost. But that's a long range plan that you need to go look up. My only other comment is I'm probably not going to fly. So when you raise the dues, you're doing it for my fun coming out there. And
Well,
I
we
have a
appreciate
couple
you
other
coming out there.
ideas, but thanks for all the hard work you guys are doing to study this situation.
Thank you, Heinz.
And
I
I'm off.
appreciate it. All right. Appreciate it very much, and we'll look to have you keep coming out for another few years at least, for sure. As far as the whole tow plane operations idea, I do want to thank you for that idea. It's definitely a long-term thing, but in some ways that does dovetail in with what I was talking about earlier about maybe offering sort of umbrella coverage with other clubs and making it some kind of mutual aid society sort of a thing. And it very much is in keeping with the SGC's core mission of being a coordinating body and a promotional body that helps soaring across the region. So yes, we definitely will continue to look into that and ideas like it. Anybody else have any? Sorry, go ahead.
I'll
Troy.
just add one additional thought with that. It's not an either or thing either. Like we can do cover the fixed fees for now. We can find other ways to share these assets or operate differently, and it might reduce those costs or might increase our tow plane availability even more if we have a different way of finding them, right? So that's what's kind of cool about this idea is it's not either or, doesn't exclude other possibilities down the road.
Absolutely. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. Well, I really like the idea. I'd go for the $200 thing and the really low tow rates. The one thing that I think that does is it gives me an incentive to come to Afraid more and fly more, because the more I fly, the cheaper my tows are. It averages out to a much cheaper tow. And what I was thinking is put myself in the shoes of a motor glider, self-launcher. There's a lot of self-launchers out there that may not use the tow plane or don't anticipate using the tow plane, but once in a while they have a mechanical problem and they need a tow plane. And Tori and I had talked about this a little bit. We could have a special high tow rate for them that maybe averages $100 a tow, for that one time that they want to take a tow. And so that you have that option. That could even be for a visitor that just comes once and flies, takes one tow out of a freighter or something. At least they have an option to not pay that big upfront fee and just take a more expensive tow. Do that on the side. One thing I've thought about in the past is how do you make it fair for all the members? Because motor glider people don't use tow planes normally. And yet, it was difficult to figure out how to make all the fees fair to everybody. Well, in this case, if you've got what I call like a tow launch club, where you belong to the club of taking tow launches rather than self launches, and then you belong to that club. You're not, by paying the base fee, you're not cutting into the membership fees for the people who don't take tows. And that also goes for people who don't fly, but are members. So it makes it more fair, I think, for everybody to have like this tow launch club, and everybody that takes tows is a member of that, and you have a more expensive tow if somebody doesn't want to be a member of that, or those people that might just want one tow now and then and don't really expect to take very many.
Yeah, it's a good idea worth considering. Thanks, Chris. I think the committee is going to want to noodle a little bit on that and make sure that if we did do something like that, we didn't set ourselves up for either a bookkeeping nightmare or somebody trying to game the system and sit there and be like, oh, I meant to take one tow, but then I ended up taking 3 tows. So now give me a refund because it would have been cheaper if I paid for the right. We want to avoid getting into some of those corner cases if we can. But I hear you loud and clear on making it equitable for all. And again, to your point and some of the things Kurt and others have brought up, we are in interesting situation because we are not a normal club. We're not doing primary training. We don't have a straight fleet of gliders. We have a variety of members, some of whom fly with us, some of whom are longtime supporters and don't fly with us, and some who only come out for events. And we're really trying to be conscientious and make sure that we can be a place for people to be a member and participate in positively and not feel like they're having to pay for things that they're not getting value out of, and that we're sharing the load appropriately across folks.
Yeah,
Now,
one more thought
go ahead,
that I
Chris.
had. I also think it's to have the be a member of that group and then have the really low tow fees is a nice incentive to use SGC tow planes over other tow planes. And because it's at our facility, it's in Ephrata, we want to try to promote that because that's where we need the revenue. And so it is a way to keep people flying behind SGC tow planes. And the more you come out to Ephrata, the cheaper your tows are. So I think it's a great incentive.
And they may rent instead of just doing weekly rental, they may do a seasonal rental for 220 and the $100. You know what I'm saying? Because they're coming more, so you may get more money that way too.
Yeah, good idea, worth thinking about. Thanks, guys. Jeff's had his hand up for a little while, so let's go to Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, so I have 2 motor gliders. If I have to get an aero tow, I would like to just pay the regular tow rate. It just makes it very simple. And just another comment, down at Williams, if I self-launch, they charge me $25. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but it's just maybe something to throw in there. I don't think that every self-launch pilot should kick in $25, but just as a self-launch pilot, just charge me the $100 tow and I'll be happy with that because I won't be doing too much of that. Okay, that's all I have to say.
So who
Thanks,
keeps
Jeff.
track of those tows at Williams? The self-launchers.
Noelle, she is a hawk, let me tell you. I will say for anybody, small difference. Williams is a private airport. It's I think people would squawk a little bit if we were charging people for using a public airport runway, but they can do things a little differently down there. They also have a very nice facility, very nice people. But seriously though, Jeff, good points. Thank you. And yeah, what I'm hearing is maybe the rates and fees committee, maybe we want to put our heads down after this and say let's look at making this kind of a two-tier structure. Either you pay a straight $100 a tow or something like that, or you say I'm a member of the launch club and you pay the fixed fee and then the lower per tow cost. And if we can make a way to if we can manage to make that not a burden on our bookkeeping folks, then that may be a very good option forward. Anyone else have any additional thoughts here?
This is Jeff again. Down at Minden, they have some crazy program down there, the VIP program. I haven't looked at it. Has anybody looked at what they're doing down there? But it is a very different program from what we've been accustomed to for tows. Anybody? I think their VIP program puts you at the head of the tow line, at the head of the grid. I'm not sure, but I'm just.
Whoa, Jeff, you just blew my mind.
I don't know if we want to go the Disney Fast Pass route, given that we're a member-oriented club and we're talking about equitability tonight. I mean, there's a part of me that's tempted, but
Well, anyway, I sorry about blowing your mind, but I think that's part of their program there.
No, it's funny. It was I thought that was interesting. Interesting way to beat Ron Clark to the front of the line.
if you can't beat him, outspend him.
Hey, I can totally outspend Ron. I'll never beat him in the morning.
Brian, go ahead. You got your hand up.
Yeah, so you mentioned it before. I don't know if you gave us any figures. Do you have a sense of how many of your members actually take tows and how many are just don't even fly, for example? You gave some figures, I think, on how many took tows. Is there a larger percentage of members that fly and that don't?
So the breakdown is roughly that we have, and Tori, correct me on my numbers if I'm off by too much here, but every year we almost without fail have between 150 and 160 active members who've paid for at least one type of membership fee. Right now we've got juniors and family and regular and lifetime, but across all those we get 150 people, 160 people at the high end, but I'm calling 150, nice round number. Of those 150, a little over half, 90, take at least one tow. And then Tori, I think the number was somewhere between somewhere around 60. 60 take at least 3 tows?
Yeah, I'll give you the numbers. So 30% on average take 1 or 2 tows. 70% take 3 or more. And half of the members take 4 or more tows a year.
Okay.
And then there's
of that 90, you mean?
Of the yes, correct. Of the 80 to 90 that take a tow, 30% of them take 1 or 2 tows, 70% take 3 or more, and 50% take 4 or more.
You just may need to do a survey to find out how many members potentially you would lose if you went the route of adding all of that into the regular membership. That's all. We talked about at Hood River Soaring. Someone suggested as a fundraising method is raising the lifetime membership by quite a bit. Well, what do you want? 0 of this big amount,
right?
Or some of these continuing,
right?
And I think the way to do that, maybe you don't want to get too democratic about it, but you might need to do a survey at some point to find out who you might lose. I'm not threatening to go. I'm going to be there, but but you know, you,
People on the
you might
margin,
look,
sure.
well,
People
you
are going to
might,
be like,
well,
I don't know. Maybe I'll go
well,
next year.
well, some of the people that are just trying to support you, it might be worth supporting at the current level, right? You know, so it's I think you need to get a
Right.
feel for that, or you could unwittingly imbalance it the other way.
One of the things that, as I put this analysis together, I have 2 kids that love to come and help push gliders around and chase tow ropes and wash airplanes, and I hope I don't have to pay for their tow plane access in their membership fee. They love to come out and drive the tow cart, but I don't think it's worth $100 or $200 a year for each of them. Anyway, so I think it's a good idea for us to think about the tow plane access as being something that's different. It's not a burden on every class of member, especially like the motor glider pilots and the people who are part of our community but don't fly behind a tow plane.
Yeah. Given how rare it is to have kids that want to come out and help that aren't even flying themselves, I don't want to do anything to alienate your boys, man. That's a rare gem right there. Malon's got his hand up. Go ahead, Malon.
Yeah, just back to the same issue. If you need a tow plane, it's got to have an engine, it's got to have tires, it's got to have all those things. And so for one guy to say, I only need 1 tow, I took 18 tows with you guys last year, and I took 8 tows with Evergreen last year, right? And so I'm not weighing in here as, you know, a lot of times it was me, Chris Clicks, and Brian Case. We were the only ones in afraid of, you know, looking for tows and towing each other. So I'm just trying to weigh in. If a guy's trying to fly a lot, then if everybody needs the tow plane, they need the tow plane. And I think that cost burden, I think Kurt was saying it best, the fixed cost needs to be distributed to everybody who needs the tow plane rather than one party or another paying for it more. Because I'll tell you right now, when the tow rates went to $76, I took 1 tow last year. If I couldn't hook up, I didn't take another tow. That's just the way I did it, because now it's $150 and it just, you know, and I don't pay the bills at my house. My wife does, you know, and so when she sees those numbers, she's like going, hey, what'd you do over there? You know, were you partying or were you flying, you know? And so that's the reason why I'm interested in this leveling the costs of the and I own 2 airplanes, I own 3 gliders. And so I know what it costs to fly. So I'm very familiar with that. So I'm not trying to weigh in too heavy, but I'm saying that I think everyone needs to understand, if you need a tow plane, it costs $60,000 every 2,000 hours to put a new engine in it. You know, and that's today's cost, not next year's cost. So.
Appreciate that reality check there, Malin. It's really good, and I hope that your words and the presentation we put together tonight really helps folks realize that, and see it with their own eyes. So cool. I'm going to open it back up for 1 or 2 last questions here, because I don't want to hold people for forever. Anybody else have any final questions, concerns, or thoughts?
Yeah, no, this is Dave Roisha. I wonder if we ought to send out a general email to the membership and just solicit opinions so that we get everybody's opinion. It is interesting. I'm surprised at all the support. I'm encouraged by it, but maybe we need to canvass the members that aren't attending regularly.
Good call. So here's what I'm going to do then, because I really like that idea. I will get this recording. I know I'm a little behind on posting recordings to YouTube. I will get this edited and posted to YouTube by tomorrow. I will email all current members, everyone who's renewed for 2024. Tomorrow, I will email them a link to this presentation, and I will email them a link to a poll. And the poll will basically say, you know, which of these are you most in favor of? And then a text box to fill in any commentary and feedback people have. And we'll see what feedback we get from the members. Does that sound like a good idea to you guys?
I think it's good for all the members to see the discussion here. I also think it might be somewhat unrealistic for people to follow it and do it. So kind of a written synopsis and just a brief outline of the situation and some recommendations and an outline of the feedback we got here tonight in written form would be great. And I can help with that too, Noel, if necessary.
Thanks, Tori. I appreciate the offer. Let's go for that together. Doug, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you're going to have a poll, make it like a ranked choice thing. So, you know, this is my best options, so on and so forth. I appreciate that.
I like the idea. Ranked choice voting is a good thing, so I will make a note. Cool. Right. Any last questions, comments? People want to scream at me? Okay. I am going to share my screen just because I want everyone to see that lovely sunset picture one last time. I want to thank you all so much for your time and attention tonight, all your awesome feedback. Really appreciate it. Everyone's participation is what makes this club a club, and it's what makes all this fun and worthwhile, in addition to the awesome thermals from time to time. So if you have any questions that occur to you after this meeting, you are welcome to email sgcboard@seattleglidercouncil.org or put your text into that poll that will be coming out soon. Thank you very much, everybody. Also hope to see some of you out in April for the opening of the facility because, as it says on the screen, Soaring starts soon. Thanks, everybody. Have yourselves a great night.